we are talking about Mark Rutte's nomination, and the Dutch Prime Minister is almost certain to be nominated as the next NATO Secretary General. And this follows a withdrawal of opposition from Hungary and Slovakia, which previously posed significant obstacles to his candidacy.
Right, and joining us right now is Mr. Tabach, former Chief of Staff, NATO Military Liaison Mission in Moscow. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, TVP World. Good to see you, Ben and Alexandra.
Right. Apologies for that slight mistake earlier, but I'm wondering whether or not you can tell us about this new NATO Secretary Chief that might be coming in, and what's the holdup? What's been making it difficult with the Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania?
You know, the thing is, it is very, I can see the Slovakia and Romania because they had a pretty close ties to Soviet Union and to Russia. But Hungary, you know, historically, they are not, to be honest with you, I've never met a Hungarian, and I had a large circle of Hungarian friends. I worked for an ambassador of a Hungarian heritage. They hate Russians. So I'm not sure what President Orban means by displaying friendship towards Putin, which is hated by the Hungarians a great deal because of his KGB background or his KGB presence. Never former KGB, you're always KGB. But so I'm not sure about them, but that's the politics that they're playing. We could never tell what the politicians do, what they have on their mind. Maybe it's oil prices, or maybe what it is, maybe it's something else. But it's definitely a chance that will not be passed by Putin. He will use it to the max. And of course, as we know that hopefully the new Secretary General of United Nations is kind of a supportive of Ukraine fight, and also does not display, how should I put it politically correct? He does not display distaste towards Israel. Which is, you know, European Union and NATO has been playing kind of a cold with Israel. It's a country that is democratic, that shares our values, that is being attacked by terrorists. Yet, you know, so it is going to be interesting the way it turns out. It's going to be interesting to watch what will happen when all these changes are supposed to be happening this year.
And of course, not everything is set in stone, but we might speculate about Mark Rutte. So how might Rutte's leadership style influence NATO's strategic priorities if chosen?
Well, again, you know, NATO is not just a military alliance. I think it's, first of all, is a political alliance. That's why there are two headquarters, a political headquarter and a military headquarter. I was in the military part of it, but we always knew that the major strategic planning for NATO depends on financing of NATO, and most of the countries, in my time it was 20 countries, and I believe only 4 countries, to include Poland, paid their dues. The rest of the countries were not pooling their share, and the United States had to cover. So it was always the main strategic planning was because in order to plan anything, you have to have the budget. I mean, you don't go to the store to do shopping without having the budget, how much money you can spend. You can have a list there from eggs and bread and caviar and champagne, but the budget is only for, you budgeted for caviar and champagne. But in reality, what you had in your funds was only for bread, milk, and eggs, for basics. So for now, I think it is going to be the biggest challenge, so the countries pull their own weight. So they not only commit the money, but they actually deliver the money and the funds for the NATO to function. And it doesn't mean that it is the money for NATO. It means that they're going to be putting into their own military budget 2% of their GDP. So this is a political game that they're constantly playing. And once there is a budget, we military people, we're fine with it. As long as you buy us our tools and you give us something to work with, we will perform. But if we don't have tools, if the surgeon doesn't have the tools, the scalpel, he can't perform the surgery with a dull knife.
All right, and speaking of political games, we're also looking at Romania's argument against Marco Rutte, saying that they would like to see more presence of the Central Eastern European region. Although that seems like a very valid argument, of course, some would also say that it is more a political rhetoric, or at least one that's more politically expedient. How do you look at this?
Again, I'm not, I'm biased at it. Because I worked mostly in Eastern Europe and served mostly with the Eastern European militaries. So to me, again, I'm not trying to be please you in a sense, but I would like to see a Polish secretary of NATO, because I've served with the Poles. I know what kind of warriors they are, and I know that how dedicated they are to the military, to the freedom of Eastern Europe, at least, or entire Europe. They've paid the price, and somebody from Poland could lead NATO very well and could set an example of it, and they always paid their dues.
So what do you think that now people in NATO did not perhaps see what you just described? Why do you think that now there is this kind of a certain shift towards Mark Rutte, but there is no, let's say, counter leadership candidacy coming from Eastern and Central European countries?
We say you can take a boy from the farm, but you could never take a farm from a boy. Old Europe will remain to be old Europe. Those old habits, I'll be brutally honest, of superiority, of being more advanced, more cultured, more educated. And it is all in their own minds, I think. Yet it is I think East Europeans are more advanced than it, because they've experienced the utopia of socialism and communism, which leads to terrorism, and this is what we're fighting today, in a sense, globally. So, but old Europe still thinks they're probably, they will never admit it. Again, I'm not being politically correct, that their superiority over Eastern Europe, of their, a little brother. We're all brothers, but there's a big brother, there's a little brother, there's a middle brother, but yet we're all brothers and sisters. So Europe, I think, old Europe, I would say, continue to think that they're the older brother, and it will take time to change. And that's why you guys, I mean, Eastern European countries, have to be gold in order for the old Europe to accept you as silver.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for your input and insight, and thanks again for being with us on TVP World. Our guest was Gary Tabach, former Chief of Staff, NATO Military Liaison Mission in Moscow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.